Welcome back. And as we're still marking or commemorating the 10th anniversary of June 30th revolution, this glorious revolution that has brought pride back to Egyptians and has taken Egypt to a whole new level. الجمهورية الجديدة, the new republic, glorious mega projects, and also on top of all, Egypt has retained its identity and retained its leading role inside the region and worldwide. And with the soft power of the new president, of course, back then, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, we have taken our foreign policy to a total new level that we as Egyptians feel so proud of. Of course, so many memories and so many things to talk about, and we're very delighted to be having with us here live over the phone Dr. Mustafa Tamaam. He's a professor of political science and economy. Good morning, Dr. Tamaam, and happy Eid Adha to you.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
So we, of course, as Egyptians are commemorating the 10th anniversary of June 30th revolutions. What were the conditions like? Of course, everybody knows. I'm not going to ask you about the conditions, how were they like, but let's together set an assessment of us 10 years, after 10 years, from where we were back in before 10 years and until this very day. If you like to give us this assessment, important assessment.
Well, certainly, since 10 years ago, a lot of things changed, you see, and there have been a lot of positive aspects that have been realized in various areas, see, in the political or the economic or social dimensions have been a lot of changes, positive changes have been taken and have been realized. Certainly, this has been reflected in a lot of projects that have been taken in all these dimensions.
Right, can I get in here, please? If you could lower the volume of your TV set, please, Dr. Tamaam?
Yeah, I lower what?
You can lower the volume of your TV set, please?
It's not on.
Oh, it's not on, okay. That's what I guess, okay.
So, as I just mentioned now, that a lot of positive aspects have been taken into consideration in various domains.
Yes.
And certainly, what is important, that the most important thing that the country would have suffered if this change didn't occur. Actually, the country would be suffering a great deal, and it could be turning into a very serious situation that could destroy probably the country completely. And this has been, you see, let us have a look what's going around, you see, in various other Arab countries. You see there is a lot of political instability, and unfortunately these countries are in great trouble until now.
Right. Mentioning the situation in neighboring countries, this was my second question to you, but let me put it that way. The situation in Egypt was so intense, and with a group of militants, a terrorist group, kidnapping the country and grabbing the office, the presidential office in Egypt, and taking over, reigning Egypt for 80 years of history of terrorism and bad ideologies, wrong ideologies, and the interference of religion into not even a good image of religion. There were very, very negative aspects about that particular phase in our lives. So the situation in Egypt was so different because Egyptians have a history of 7,000 years that gave them a boost and gave them a culture that could not be dominated by any other wrong ideology. So Egyptians did not buy that, and Egyptians resisted that bad ideology or wrong ideology. Egyptians resisted the idea of the interference of religion with politics, mixing religion with politics, and taking interests under the name of religion. So many negative elements. And they kicked that terrorist group out. But the situation was different in other neighboring countries.
Yes, unfortunately, that is true. The point is probably that other Arab countries here, there have been the political situation and political dimensions are quite different, and probably, as you said, traditions are quite different than the one we have here in Egypt. And certainly, there are probably certain countries have a lot of tribes, you see, and these tribes are probably affected by certain religious conditions which are not really true, you see, and they're affected by it, and probably they believe in all these issues now. And certainly, but this, fortunately, this didn't occur here in Egypt. And certainly, on the other side, as you just mentioned now, that the Egyptians are very aware and they are knowledgeable and they can understand, they could differentiate between what is good and what is not correct, you see. So
and
certainly, when when things went in the wrong direction, you see, it was not accepted by the Egyptian society, you see, which, as you mentioned, we have a tradition of 7,000 years, so certainly this is quite different than other countries. And certainly this was a very, very important aspect that the Egyptians themselves didn't accept these ideologies because we didn't have this situation since Egypt was a country. See, we didn't have, we never had that along our history. So it was something which was strange and was not probably normal to our Egyptian society.
Right, that's very true, sir. And it's really ironic that a strong group like that was enforced and empowered by some other countries and also financed by some other countries and succeeded in faking and trying to fake its real identity for almost 80 years from everybody, but was then brought down by the Egyptians in only 1 year, which was really ironic. But let me take you to our third question, which is the scene of June 30th revolution that was filmed and that was taken by Google Earth, that take that very popular shot to the whole world, more than 40 million flocking to the streets of Egypt, in every single corner of Egypt, in every governorate, shouting and chanting slogans, kicking out that president of the Brotherhood, and also calling for freedom, mandating Defense Minister Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and also calling for the armed forces to save Egypt. It was really very touching and impressive that every single person of us remember it until this very day. If you like to elaborate.
Certainly, what happened this year on the 30th of June was due to a lot of mistakes and a lot of unusual situations that were taken by the Muslim Brotherhood, and probably the most important thing was that this institution was not able to take and to give the Egyptians a good idea about what they're going to do. You see, they created barriers between a lot of institutions. They created barriers with the judges. They created barriers by issuing laws we were not giving the president probably authorities which were never even given here in our country. You see, probably the deterioration of the economic situation, also the decision-making process, you see, in a lot of areas, certainly gave the impression that this institution is not professional or not will go get the country into chaos. So certainly all these factors combined, you see, led that the Egyptians had turned around on on the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
So it was not actually We were not surprised that in every place you see that they were that there had been an uprising, because certainly all people at all levels were not very much satisfied with what was going on in the country.
Exactly. Also on this occasion, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi gave a very impressive address to the nation. And he talked about the solidarity of Egyptians, the awareness of this nation, the very impressive culture of the Egyptian nation and of the citizens. And he talked about all those elements and all those values, and he said that those values should be subject to many studies in history.
That's true. Yes.
Right. That's true.
Certainly, the address of the president was very, very important, and certainly this probably gave confidence in the Egyptians that the change is going to occur. See, that was very, very important, because certainly a lot of people, you see, imagine that the Muslim brothers probably to remove them would be not an easy process, because certainly there was fear that there would be a lot of internal turbulence in the country here, and they are not going to give up easily. So certainly by communicating, the president communicating the situation clearly, this gained the support of the majority of Egyptians, and thanks to God that we succeeded in getting rid of these guys, because they would have been, if they had been continued to rule the country, I think they would have destroyed the country completely.
Also, the president made a very hand smart. He talked about a nation, which is the Egyptian nation, that could never be dissected or divided, no matter how many strong forces could try to take, no matter how many time or how many years efforts could be spared to dissect this country. Nobody could ever succeed in doing this. And probably that would lead us to the efficiency and the effectiveness of establishing the new republic in only almost 7 years. Throughout 7 years.
That's true, certainly, because when we had this revolution, the 30th of June, a lot of steps have been taken in order to get the country back into the right track. And certainly the results were obvious to everyone, you see, in social projects, in economic projects, in the foreign relations. So we have been advanced in all these aspects, and certainly by having the results that we saw, certainly this gave confidence to Egyptians that we are on the right track.
Exactly. We are on the right track, and we also took some magical steps taken by a great savior and leader, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, a person with a very impressive power of foreign policy. He succeeded profoundly in taking Egypt from a country for a year that was drowning in complete chaos to another nation who is taking a leading position inside the region, and also going to the UN Security Council and lecturing people about countering terrorism and conquering terrorism at the same time, and chairing the African Union, and you name it. So talking about the great achievements that have been established in only 10 years, and probably some of them were established in a span of like 5 years or 3 years. So if you like to remember with us, or take a flashback and remember with us the efforts that were exerted so rapid to bring us to what we are now.
Certainly, this was due to probably a strategic plan that was set up in order to have certain objectives that the states will have to reach. And this was done in coordination with the Ministry of Planning by putting a long-term plan in order to what should be achieved within a certain period of time, say in 10 years' time. So certainly a lot of aspects in social projects have been taken into consideration, and I'd like to concentrate on that a lot of importance have been given to people living in villages now, and not only concentrating on the main cities, which are Cairo, Cairo and Alexandria, but going to villages and upgrading the social and the health situation and education, upgrading the education system there. And certainly on the other side, a lot of infrastructure projects have been taken and implemented. Also, if you realize that in the domain of the electricity, in the past, you remember we used to have power cuts for a long time. Exactly. Now we have a surplus of electricity. In the field of oil and gas, certainly the discoveries which have been taken into place, into consideration, have been probably in the gas field, a lot of discoveries, and a lot of foreign companies have been attracted to come and work here into Egypt. So in all aspects, all these aspects certainly have upgraded and raised our economy and gave hope that things will be getting be improving dramatically.
Right. You are a professor of political science and economy, and of course, you're pretty aware of the very resourceful economic reform program that was taken by the Egyptian administration to be able to effect what we are in now. I mean, those mega projects and all the steps that has been taken, and the social network programs, and you know, the 1.5 million fadans, and the new Alamein, and the Suez Canal, and everything. So how do you assess this economic reform program, and how would you talk about it and explain it to the people who opposed it?
Certainly, this is a very important point that you have raised. We should realize a very important point that if we didn't take or implement the economic reform program, we have been into great. We would have been facing a great deal of problems here, because certainly by predicting and what is going to happen and putting probably a plan in order to expect what's going to happen certainly is very, very important. And due to the economic reform, certainly the country now, you see, as we are, the political and economic worldwide situation is in turbulence. Certainly, now Egypt was not affected by these factors that a lot of countries in Europe also are suffering a great deal of problems in the field of energy and field probably of logistics. Fortunately, by putting this plan and the economic reform, certainly this reduced the risk and the negative aspects that would have been taken if we didn't do all these efforts.
Also, together with the economic reform program and the mega projects and countering terrorism and conquering it and all that, there is also the advance or the effecting equal rights and maintaining rights for some sectors in society, like women, for example, like minorities, like the people with special needs, and democracy that was divided fairly over every sector. And we could very easily notice that in the cabinet of the government. More than 8 women ministers or 8 women ministers in the cabinet, and also the people with special needs inside the parliament. And I mean, many faces of life have changed totally.
Yes, definitely.
And this is what we call New Egypt. How would you describe New Egypt?
Certainly, this was a very important point that you have raised. And because by having the cooperation of not only women, but by giving importance to a lot of categories, as you mentioned, in the society. This certainly will have a positive impact and will create confidence also that between the government and the citizens. So certainly by having the participation of women, as you mentioned just now, this is very, very important because they play a very important role. And unfortunately, in the past, there was not a lot of importance was given to this factor, but now, by utilizing all the qualifications of Egyptians, regardless if they are of their probably of their if they're men or women or even if they live in villages or they live in other rural countries, by giving importance to this certainly will raise the economy and will be a source of probably of a resource that we use in order to elevate the economy.
Right. On this note, Dr. Mustafa Tamaam, Professor of Political Science and Economy, would like to thank you so much, and you have a good day. And we're going to go to a short break, and we'll come to continue the breakfast show, so stay with us.